Gemini communication styles confuse everyone because you're having 3 conversations at once, and none of them are the one people think they're in. You're the most articulate sign and the most misunderstood. Understanding Gemini communication style psychology means understanding this. You're not confusing because you're unclear. You're confusing because you're operating on a completely different frequency. And in the next 5 minutes, we're breaking down exactly how Gemini talks and why it drives everyone else crazy. The first thing you need to understand about Gemini communication styles: Gemini never says just one thing. When Gemini talks, there are always multiple layers: the literal words being said, the subtext underneath, the meta-commentary on the conversation itself, the emotional undertone they're not directly expressing. Most people communicate linearly. One thought, one meaning, straightforward. Gemini communication styles are holographic. You're communicating on multiple frequencies simultaneously. You'll make a joke while making a point, while testing someone else's reaction, while processing your own thoughts out loud. Other people hear the joke and think that's the conversation. But for you, the joke was layer 1 of 5. This is why Gemini communication styles confuse people. They're responding to layer 1. You're already on layer 4. And then you frustrated they don't get it, but they were never equipped to get it, because they can't process multidimensional communication. Second key aspect of Gemini communication styles: you think out loud. For most people, the process is think, then organize, then filter, then speak. For Gemini, it's think and speak simultaneously. You're not talking at people. You're talking through ideas. Your words are your thought process made audible. This means people hear you contradict yourself mid-sentence. Start with one opinion and end with another. Explore 3 different angles in one breath and change your position as you're explaining it. They think you're indecisive or don't know what you're talking about. Wrong. You're doing real-time intellectual processing. You're thinking at conversation speed. Your mouth is keeping pace with your mind, which is moving faster than most people's final thoughts. This is Gemini communication style psychology. You're not confused. You're computing. And your computation happens externally, not internally. The problem? People mistake your process for your conclusion. Third dimension of Gemini communication styles: you switch perspectives without warning. You'll be arguing your point, then suddenly argue against it. Not because you're being difficult, because you just saw the other side, and it's valid too. In one conversation, you can be the advocate, the devil's advocate, the neutral observer, the mediator, and the challenger. And you shift between these roles fluidly. For you, this is intellectual honesty. You're showing you can see all angles. You're demonstrating nuanced thinking. For them, it's confusing as hell, because they think your position is you. But for Gemini, your position is just the angle you're exploring right now. This is why Gemini communication styles make people say, "I don't know where you actually stand." You stand everywhere and nowhere. You can hold space for multiple truths. But people want you to pick a side and stay there. Your refusal to do that isn't weakness. It's intellectual flexibility. But it reads as unreliability to people who think in binaries. Fourth characteristic of Gemini communication styles: you prioritize data over feelings in conversation. Someone shares something emotional. Your instinct? Analyze it. Explain it. Provide context. Offer solutions. You're not being cold. You're trying to help by adding clarity. But here's what happens. They say, "I'm really struggling with this." You hear, "Here's a problem that needs solving." You respond, "Well, if you look at it from this angle, you can see that." They hear, "You're dismissing my feelings." You weren't dismissing. You were engaging intellectually, because that's how Gemini communication styles work. Information is your emotional language. When you explain something, you're showing care. When you offer perspective, you're showing investment. When you analyze their problem, you're showing love. But people don't speak that language. They want, "I hear you," not "have you considered." The disconnect isn't your fault. It's a fundamental difference in communication operating systems. You're running on Logic 2.0. They're running on Emotion 1.0. You're both trying to connect, but you're using incompatible software. So why do Gemini communication styles create so many problems? In relationships, your partner thinks you're emotionally unavailable because you intellectualize instead of validate. You think they're being illogical because they prioritize feelings over facts. At work, colleagues think you're unreliable because you change your approach mid-project. You're just adapting to new information. They see inconsistency. You see evolution. With friends, they think you're not taking them seriously because you make jokes during heavy conversations. But humor is how you process heavy things. Your levity is your coping mechanism, not your disrespect. In arguments, people think you're being manipulative because you can argue any position. You're not manipulating, you're demonstrating range. But they experience it as you always having an answer or never admitting you're wrong. The core issue with Gemini communication styles: you read communicating at a complexity level most people can't match. And instead of them recognizing that as advanced communication, they label it as problematic communication. You're not the problem. You're just incompatible with linear thinkers. Here is how you make Gemini communication styles work without dumbing yourself down. 1. Signal your layers. Say, "I'm thinking out loud here," or "I'm playing devil's advocate." Give people a map to your communication style. 2. Pause between perspectives. When you shift angles, pause for 3 seconds. Let people catch up to your pivot. 3. Translate your intellectualization. After you analyze, add, "and I can see why that's hard for you." Bridge logic to emotion. 4. Choose your audience. Not everyone can keep up with Gemini communication styles. Stop trying to force deep conversations with surface-level thinkers. Your communication isn't broken, it's advanced. Master it, don't minimize it. Gemini communication styles aren't confusing. They're just multidimensional. And most people are still operating in 2D. You're not too much. You're not unclear. You're not inconsistent. You're just speaking a language most people haven't learned yet. Stop apologizing for being articulate, complex, and layered. That's not a communication problem. That's a communication superpower. The problem isn't how you talk. It's who you're talking to. Subscribe for more.